Imagine waking up tomorrow and your car suddenly breaks down, or your kid gets sick, or an unexpected bill shows up in your mailbox. For millions of Americans, that single moment is enough to trigger panic, fear, credit card debt, and even a complete financial spiral. And here's the shocking truth. Nearly 70% of Americans cannot handle a dollar. 400 emergency without borrowing money, going into debt, or selling something they own. Think about that for a moment. The richest country in the world, with the largest economy in history, and yet the majority of its citizens are financially fragile. How did we get here? How can a nation built on opportunity, innovation, and wealth become a place where one unexpected bill can push families to the edge? Today we're going to dig deep into the hidden reality of American financial life, why savings are collapsing, why household budgets are falling apart, why inflation and debt are crushing the middle class, and most importantly, what this crisis reveals about the future of America's financial stability. Let's start with the core problem. Most Americans simply do not have savings. Surveys from multiple financial institutions show that the average American has less than $1,000 in liquid savings. A large percentage have under $100. That means that even a small bump in the road, a flat tire, medical bill, a broken phone becomes a crisis. But this didn't happen overnight. This is the result of decades of stagnant wages, rising costs, and a financial system that pushes people to rely on credit instead of cash. The typical American worker has seen their real purchasing power barely move in 40 years. Meanwhile, the cost of everything essential, housing, healthcare, education, food, and transportation has skyrocketed. When your expenses rise faster than your income every year, saving money becomes almost impossible. Housing is one of the biggest reasons Americans can't save. Rent has increased dramatically, and the dream of owning a home is slipping further away for millions. In many cities, rent consumes 40% to 50% of take-home pay. In some places, it's even worse. Add utilities, groceries, gas, insurance, childcare, and suddenly most Americans are left with nothing to save, not because they're irresponsible, but because their paycheck disappears the moment it arrives. And when the foundational cost of living is that high, people don't build emergency funds. They don't invest. They simply try to survive the month. But housing is just one piece of the puzzle. The U.S. has the world's most expensive healthcare system, and this alone pushes millions into financial distress every year. On top of housing and healthcare, there's another massive burden: debt. Americans carry more personal debt than almost any country in the world. Credit card debt, student loans, car loans, personal loans, the list goes on. And it's not just the amount of debt, it's the cost of that debt. Credit card interest rates averaging over 20% mean that people who fall behind get trapped in a never-ending cycle. Buy groceries on a credit card, miss one payment, and suddenly the balance grows faster than you can pay it off. For many Americans, credit cards have replaced savings. When savings disappear, debt takes its place, and the financial stress becomes permanent. Another reason Americans can't handle emergencies is the unpredictable nature of the U.S. job market. Millions of Americans work jobs with unstable schedules, fluctuating hours, and inconsistent paychecks. Gig workers, part-timers, contract workers, freelancers, these people face income uncertainty every single month. Some weeks are good, some are terrible, and you can't build an emergency fund when your paycheck changes constantly. Even full-time workers often feel insecure. Companies cut hours, reduce benefits, lay people off with no warning, and rely more on temporary workers. Job security, which used to be a cornerstone of the American dream, barely exists anymore. When your income feels unstable, you live in a constant state of financial anxiety. There's also the psychological side of this problem. Many Americans are emotionally exhausted by constant money stress. When you're always worried about rent, bills, and debt, planning ahead becomes mentally impossible. This is known as financial fatigue. People aren't saving because they're irresponsible. They're exhausted. They're overwhelmed. They're trying to keep their head above water. When you're stuck in survival mode, planning for emergencies feels like a luxury you can't afford. But here's where it gets even more concerning. While saving has become harder, the number of emergencies has increased. Cars break down more often as they age. Medical issues increase as healthcare becomes unaffordable. Housing problems arise from older buildings and rising maintenance costs. Life has not gotten safer or cheaper. It's gotten more fragile. That means emergencies are more likely to happen, and Americans are less prepared than ever before. So why is the $400 emergency such an important measurement? Because $400 isn't a huge amount of money. It's a small car repair, a doctor visit, a school expense, a bill that came out of nowhere. In most other developed countries, the majority of citizens could pay that without stress. But in the US, that $400 becomes a symbol of how fragile the financial system is for the average person. When such a small amount can cause panic, it means people are living right on the edge. The consequences are huge. When people cannot handle emergencies, they fall into debt. When they fall into debt, they lose their financial mobility. When they lose mobility, they lose hope. And when millions of people feel stuck, the entire economy becomes unstable. This is why so many Americans turn to payday loans, high-interest lenders, buy now, pay later apps, or even GoFundMe campaigns to survive emergencies. GoFundMe has literally become one of America's largest health insurance companies, not because it's meant to be, but because families have no other safety net. At the same time, technology has made financial stress even more visible. People see luxurious lifestyles on social media and feel pressure to keep up. They feel embarrassed about their money struggles. They don't talk about their finances because it feels shameful. But silence makes the problem worse. Millions of Americans feel alone, even though most of the country is experiencing the same struggle. Now, let's talk about something deeper: the cultural expectation of self-reliance in America. Many Americans believe in handling problems on their own. There's pride in independence. But independence without a safety net becomes dangerous. In other countries, strong social systems catch people when they fall. In America, families are expected to handle everything themselves, even emergencies that can wipe out their savings overnight. The American system rewards success but punishes vulnerability. And that creates a cycle where people who fall behind never catch up. So where does this leave the average American? Living paycheck to paycheck, constantly stressed, hoping no emergencies happen. Using credit cards as safety nets, struggling to build savings, worrying about the future, and feeling like they're failing, even though the system makes it nearly impossible to stay ahead. But the final most important question is, what happens next? What does it mean for America if 70% of its population is financially fragile? It means the economy is vulnerable. It means families are vulnerable. It means entire communities can collapse from small shocks. And unless wages rise, costs fall, or systemic changes happen, the situation will only get worse. Understanding this crisis isn't about blaming individuals. It's about understanding a system that leaves millions exposed to financial danger. It's about seeing the truth behind the numbers. It's about acknowledging that the American financial system is not built to protect the average person. And it's about recognizing that many Americans are doing everything right and still can stay ahead. If you're watching this video, you're already taking the first step, understanding how the system works. The more people know, the more we can push for a future where Americans live in fear of a $400 emergency, a future where financial security is possible, not just a dream.